Hello there, I'm Kath in Hong Kong.
Hello, I'm Adrian in London via Singapore.
Via Singapore. Where do
Yes,
you go?
remember, after we met in Hong Kong, I continued my journey into Singapore for another chapter of the East Meets West. And that is actually one of the reasons why we ended up doing this bonus episode.
So after Hong Kong, in this episode, we will have an extra session of Singapore, and hence we look completely different.
Yes, so without further ado, let's pick up the story where we left off in Hong Kong.
Ripples dance where the sunrise bleeds. Our journey flows where the river leads. Echoes of laughter fill the air. Chatterpot secrets everywhere.
Hello! You might notice we have a change of clothes.
Yeah, we had a change of clothes. We had a good sleep since yesterday.
Yeah. So last night after we recorded the first bit of the podcast, we went to paddling at night. Night paddling with new friends we made at Victoria Recreational Club. Thanks, shout out to Christian for having us.
VRC for short.
Yeah. So it was actually really nice because the club itself was next to a beach in Deepwater Bay, Hong Kong. And it's just nice to be on the beach and it's warm.
It was warm. The water actually felt warm on the first contact.
Yeah.
Although after about 5 minutes, you kind of start questioning whether you want to be in there for long.
Well, I mean, compared to London, I suppose it's really warm. And we get a feel of the water is because how do we get on the boat? We actually hopped on the boat from the seawater. We didn't go to a pontoon and just get on the boat, which is quite new to us.
In a way, it's nice because they're doing the traditional way. It's a team sport, so
Yeah.
everyone on the team gets a hand on the boat, carry
Yeah.
the boat to the water, down the ramp. But on the other hand, I kind of like using tools when you can use tools. So put it on a dolly or something and take it to the water rather than carrying it and go waist deep for some people to launch.
I mean, I suppose it's nice for the summertime, but it might be a bit too cold now.
It might be in December. I mean, we're not even December yet, and the water was probably about 20 degrees,
Yeah.
18 degrees.
Yep, but it was quite nice to have a dip in the water, in my opinion. Adrian
Yeah.
clearly disagrees.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I didn't mind that, especially the first thing you do. It's completely new. But since you mentioned the Deepwater Bay, I have to say I'm glad we slept over it because in the morning today I
Yeah.
just went to look it up, see where we were exactly on the map, what the location looked like, because we paddled in pitch black
Yes.
from 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
and the only lights around were the light from the flats around the bay.
Yeah.
And some landmarks around the mountains there.
Yeah, so I don't know how it works in other parts of the world, but in London we are never allowed to paddle in the dark.
No, but you know what? I think I thought about it because our training location at London Regatta Centre runs parallel with London City Airport runway.
Yeah.
If you had boats on the water with lights, wouldn't that confuse the airplanes?
That was the reason why we weren't allowed.
I think that is.
That was.
So
But then,
yeah, it's not about safety.
No, it is about safety because I
Well,
train.
safety for the planes.
And for Raging Dragons, we train in the Dockland Sailing Centre, and we're not allowed out at night either.
Ah, okay.
It could be just because the centre was closed, but yeah. But anyway, it was a first for Adrian. I've done it before.
It was the first for me at night, and
Pitch dark.
I have to confess, first thing, it was really scary. I told you
Yeah.
I was going to die.
No, he actually was thinking. You actually thinking. Oh, can we just turn around? I don't want to do this. I'm not comfortable with this. And I was like, no, you're doing this.
Once you got into the boat, we were fine because
Yes.
you can see pretty much about 3 benches in front of you.
So it doesn't work for you to look at the paces.
No,
To
no,
follow the
no.
paces, can't see them. Sorry.
I mean, I was on bench 5, so I could just about see the paces.
Yeah. Well, I was on bench 2, so
No problem
no
for you.
problem seeing
Yeah.
them. And I think I've night paddled before in Hong Kong, but it wasn't. So Deepwater Bay is basically an area. It's just beaches around. Next to it is a theme park, which is mountains. It's very, I would say, very suburban.
Yeah.
And where I have paddled before at night were actually what's that called? Where you park?
Stanley.
No.
Not Stanley.
Where you park the boats. The
the marina.
typhoon shelters.
Oh, okay.
So where they park boats and there are actually buildings around it. So it's quite urban and residential. So you actually, even though there's no lights on the water, you don't put lights on the boat, but then the lights from the building surrounding you or even the street lights were actually bright enough to, you know, to show you the way. But however, yesterday, first of all, we actually went far out quite far out from the shore because there's actually beach where people swim, so we can't just cut across, and it's quite it's not as densely populated, so there's barely any lights, and yeah, we can't really see anything.
You can't really see anything, but luckily there were some yachts parked in the bay.
Yeah.
So they parked, or they anchored in the bay, they don't park. And of course they were lit like Christmas trees and spreading that light around a little bit. Actually, I think we passed a few of them within 5-10 meters. It was quite interesting to take a peek inside. What are they up to? Remember?
I didn't actually take a peek.
Okay.
Why are you peeking into somebody else's house? But
Well,
speaking of the darkness,
it's human, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. But the funny thing is, I spoke to the home lady.
Yes.
And she did not actually intend to go that close to the boats. She was saying because
yes,
it's so
she did.
dark,
Yes.
she couldn't see it.
Yes.
That's why.
Yes, she also mentioned because at one point a Christian's light was pointed in her eyes.
Christian, as in the coach.
Christian is
so
now coach.
He was
sat
sitting
in the drummer's
exactly.
seat. Yeah, because the light was in her eyes. She barely missed the buoy by a meter or something.
Yeah, we almost ramped
it
into
felt very
it.
close, yeah.
And another thing that happened. We've got fish that jumped into the boat, like
Oh,
proper
that was
fish.
awesome.
Yeah.
Did you touch one?
I had to actually rescue one and put it back to the water, and I think it's around the size of a mackerel.
Yes, there was a whole school of fish just jumping out of the water.
Yeah, at one point, yeah, like
A
there were
few
like
of them landed in the boat.
tens of them at one point was like just jumping on the side, and then a few of them were actually, it was quite interesting because at the moment that one of the fishes landed right at underneath my feet, so it was like it was ticklish, and we were doing 15 minutes non-stop paddling. I was
Yes.
like, should I sort the fish out or should I keep paddling? And I was thinking about that for like until we finished. So I kept thinking about it for like 5-10 minutes.
Did you notice what kind of fish that was?
No, but
No.
I actually thought I could have taken it home for dinner.
Well, pretty small though. What kind of dinner is that?
It's protein.
Yeah, protein is protein.
Yeah. But should we talk about what we did in the training? That's different.
Yes. So we did a lot of base training, if you can explain that.
Right. So base training is basically, the aim of base training is to build your aerobic capacity. So it will be something that's low intensity, but for long duration, continuous long duration of low intensity work in order to build your aerobic capacity and for your muscles to get used to moving for long periods of time. So we did that. So for the first 15 minutes, we did our base training, low intensity. That was around 7-8 kilometers, do you say?
In total, I think the whole
that was
session
the
was
whole
about
session.
8 kilometers, yeah.
So basically, we paddled from, whoever that knows that, we paddled from VRC, which is the far end of Deepwater Bay, to the far end of Repulse Bay, which is another beach
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
just across a little valley.
Squeezing nicely through the canal between the middle
that's a
island
little
and the
strait
main
there.
island, yeah.
Yeah. It was quite cool actually, because you never get to see these.
You never get to see the landmarks, and they say,
landscapes.
we're in the
Yeah.
canal now, pick
yeah.
it up, one up. Well, which canal? Where are we looking at?
Yeah, I wonder why they say pick it up when you're in the canal or strait. Is
There
it
may
because
be
it's
something
narrower?
to do with the currents, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. So we
Interesting.
have to find out about
Yeah.
that. And then after we did the first bit of the base training, we actually have to swap sides, go to your offside.
Oh yes,
and
that was
then-
unusual because normally in our training we do offside right at the end of the session when
Yeah.
you don't have much more to give. This was pretty soon, 15
I
minutes or
think
so
it's-
into the session.
It's good to like be able to develop your,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you started slow when you're learning something new. On your offside, most of us would probably be very uncomfortable. Feels like, I don't know how to move this paddle. Why is it not doing what I want it to do? And when you're doing low intensity work, I suppose it's one of the best time to
Yeah.
Do
yeah,
it on
get
your
into the,
offside, because
rhythm of it. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I looked at my heart rate afterwards. When I do my offside, my heart rates are so low because I cannot put as much power on my offside.
Interesting. I didn't look at that particular aspect. I just looked in general at the heart rates, and I felt for intensity, it was low intensity, as you say.
Yeah.
I barely reached 160
Yeah, but that
maximum
was the
heart
aim
rate.
of the session.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think 160 was on the race piece, which came right at the end
Yeah.
of the session.
We did a race piece in the end, and it was hard. I haven't done a race since like in 2 months. I was like, I didn't remember how it feel like.
I've not done one in 3 days, like since Penang.
All right. And he's getting ready for trials, so he's probably the fittest he can be.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yes. But the boat felt really good in that
Yes.
in that race piece.
It was
felt
gliding.
consistent.
Yeah, the power
I don't
didn't
know
drop.
the distance we did. Must have been close
350
to-
meters.
Yeah, definitely more than 250 meters.
Yeah.
But it was consistent. I didn't feel the boat drop at any point.
Yes, there wasn't really much power drop, which is very, very good. We kept it very consistent. And I think another thing we did yesterday, apart from the base training, is I was telling Adrian, every time you go visit a new club, you paddle with a new club, you learn something new. I think we learned a few things that's new.
Yeah.
What was the first one? I forgot. What was the first one?
Oh, it was, well, it's actually to do with the whole philosophy of dragon boating.
Oh, yes.
It's a quintessential team sport.
Yes.
So in the boat, as a boat, you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah. So to expand on that, that was what do we mean? Not as individual, as a team, you're only as strong as your weakest link, as in your newest. We don't want to say the weakest paddler. That doesn't sound too nice.
No. I mean,
But
Christian was referring to the intensity you put in, right?
yes,
So if you're in the boat and you're doing 100%, there's no point. You're not going to move the boat on your own if the rest of the team, all your other teammates, are doing 60%.
yes. So that's what I think I really agree with it. And it's more than that. He also noted on things like it's very important to have a team synchrony, not just timing. Synchrony as in the difference between synchrony and timing, what I would personally think is timing is just you're going in at the same time, you have the same catch, but synchrony as in you're going in at the same time, same angle, same stroke length, you're spending as the same amount of time in the water, you're recovering in the same speed, same pace, and that's what he's trying to say. And he did say, even if you're recovering really fast and the person in front of you is not, or everybody else is not, there's no point. You should be recovering everybody should be recovering at the same rate, and there's no point of you being really strong. You can put in 120%, you can recover really fast and fit in another stroke, and I think that's why our takeaway was you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I think we can't agree more than
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of synchrony and the importance of doing exactly the same across the boat, he couldn't emphasize more the importance of spending the same amount of time in the water.
Yes.
So whatever you do, don't shorten if your teammates are still going long,
yeah.
because then that forces the person behind you to shorten, and so on. The boat loses efficiency and loses speed.
That's the last thing you want to do on a dragon boat is to have a short stroke. No matter what, you want to keep the stroke as long as possible. And one really big takeaway, that's a new thing that I learned, was always I've thought when you want to up the stroke rate, naturally you would shorten the stroke by bits, by bits, by bits.
Yeah.
And when you're doing, 120, you're arm paddling. So that's how I've always thought dragon boating is. Hence we said we're no experts at the very beginning. But then what Christian said was, no, as long as you can keep the stroke length, what you're speeding up was just your recovery. You are saving time in the recovery where you're never shortening in your strokes. And that was a light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense if you want to keep the efficiency and the speed of the boat, because normally when you shorten, you kind of drop a little bit.
Yes, because you're not using your big muscles.
Your big muscles, exactly.
You want to use your big muscles.
Yeah. I think naturally will come a point where inevitably you don't lean, you don't reach
Yeah,
as much.
because you didn't have enough time
because you
to
don't
do
have enough
it.
time. It's not humanly possible to go as fast.
I mean, if you're the Chinese national team, probably. But
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, no, we've long way to go before we get there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was a really good takeaway. Try to.
Yeah, it was a really good experience. Thank you for arranging that.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you
coming
for-
along and signing your life away.
Yes. Yes, we did sign in.
Did we? Wait, we
We
signed
did
in?
sign
No,
in.
that was just the logbook of who
Yeah,
went there. But
yeah.
we didn't actually sign our lives away.
So it's actually written evidence that we were there.
Yeah, exactly. If you
Yeah.
ever visit the VRC, go have a look and you will find our names. And at the end, I think we would like to give a big shout out to all the team members of VRC that we met yesterday. You've all been really, really welcoming and really, really nice.
Absolutely, I can't say enough. They were so lovely,
I
and I think
know.
it just reinforces what we knew already about the Dragon Boat community.
Yeah,
The friendliest people in the world.
exactly.
Wherever you go, and just say, "Hey, I'm visiting. Can I have a paddle with you?" And they will just bend over backwards to
Yeah,
make it possible.
no one's ever said no to that.
No.
You know, Kath, I've had the opportunity to put that theory to the test when I went to Singapore. I went to Singapore literally less than 24 hours after we recorded that segment. And there in Singapore, I had arranged to meet a local club called the Latin Dragons of Singapore. And they were so lovely. They accepted me as a guest paddler for one of their sessions.
Aww.
Yes, it was amazing. And it was especially emotional for me because I went back to the place where I first started paddling. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Going down this road is a bit like walking down memory lane. The water you can see in front is the Kallang. This is the main water sports hub in Singapore. And I've walked this path many times on a Sunday morning on my way to training because here in this little corner of Singapore is where my paddling journey began almost 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. So I feel a little bit nostalgic, perhaps a little emotional, coming back here at the Water Sports Center. This is where we assemble on the weekend. It's very early in the morning still, and not many people arriving. I'm probably a bit early, but it's a good opportunity to show you around. This is where all the equipment is stored, and of course, the most important part, the dragon boats. Here they are. I think at any given time, there are about 25, 30 dragon boats here. Normal boats, small boats, and give it about 30 minutes, this place will be buzzing with paddlers.
So you said you paddled with a team called the Latin Dragon. Where does that name came from?
Well, as the name suggests, they are Latinos, originating from many countries, Spanish-speaking countries mainly. And they make this one element of Spanish-speaking one of the characteristics of their clubs. So I understand one of the conditions for joining them is to be able to communicate in Spanish. It's not like, go ahead.
Do you
signaled
speak
something there.
Spanish? I didn't know that.
A little bit. I mean, I can't say I speak Spanish, but I can get around a little bit. So that helped.
So ¿Cómo
probably-
estás, amigo doesn't count.
No, no, that would be holiday Spanish. Go to Benidorm and ask for a beer. No, a little bit we can get along, but how we used to communicate is they would open in Spanish. I would reply with 2 phrases in Spanish, and then say, "Look, sorry, I know my spelling is terrible, so I'm not going to embarrass myself anymore. I'll continue in English." Anyway, back to the paddling.
Yes, how was it? Anything special that they do differently?
Short answer, no, but then it would be a very short podcast. So let me talk you through it. Right now, it's the out of season in Singapore and pretty much across Southeast Asia. They are basically training to maintain their shape, to perfect their technique. So all we did that morning on the Kallang was purely paddling. 100 strokes, 200 strokes, pyramids, row by row, and so on. I mean, there are some elements because when you just paddle, you can check in on your form, on your technique, and you can improve. That's the whole point of it. We did almost the same in Hong Kong, didn't we?
Yeah, I was about to say, it actually reminds me of what we did in Hong Kong. They did a lot of base training, like we said earlier. And when you go slower, you can really like think about your form, what you're doing, and just perfect the craft.
Yeah, exactly. And also because just like in Hong Kong, I remember now, in Hong Kong they asked us to switch sides to our offside pretty soon
Yeah.
into the session, like 10, 15 minutes. We did the same in Singapore, and the coach, the Latin Dragon coach, Lindsay, had an interesting observation pretty much immediately. She said, Adrian, you should consider paddling on the left because you are so much more controlled on the left. Personally, I thought I'm rubbish on the left because when I start, you don't know what am I doing with this hand? What is this arm doing that high? But I get it. It's when you do something from scratch, you don't have time to learn anything bad. You start doing things like they should be. Did you have this experience before when you start paddling on your offside? You're a lefty. When you start off on the right,
Yes,
and
I'm a
it feels like
lefty.
you're completely different.
Yeah, I'm a lefty and I've always paddled on my left. It was since the first day I was put on a boat, I just happened to be put on the left and I just stuck with it. And then back in London, we do a little bit of offside, and I think that's something different versus Singapore and Hong Kong, as in we did it really early on in the session in Singapore and Hong Kong to do offside, whilst back in London, we tend to do it at the end of sessions. I've been with a few different clubs and they all do it the same way. And when I moved to Hong Kong, I started paddling with Sea Gods, and one of their goal of the season, which is actually coming to an end, but anyway, was to make more people an ambivalent paddler. So it's just better for the club really on a race days when you're not constrained by the lack of a left or right paddler. And so I got put on the right, no mercy. I have no bargaining power because I'm new. So I got put on the right, and I actually felt exactly the same. I felt that especially, you know, because I had to change my stroke styles being in Hong Kong. Being in the UK, I already have a specific stroke style, and if I was paddling on the left, it becomes really, really hard for me to change it to the Hong Kong style of paddling. But then when I'm on the right, because I'm starting everything from scratch, I don't know how to paddle on the right. My arms just go wherever they want to. Paddles are not straight, are not perpendicular. I feel I'm losing control. So I have to break the stroke down bits by bits by bits in my head to go through that whole 2 hour session. And because I'm doing that and knowing what are the best practices, I actually end up with a better stroke on the right. And it is, and one thing that I think the coach from Latin Dragon, Lindsay, said, and it really hits home with me, is that she said that you're more controlled. And it reminds me
Yeah.
of one of my coaches. He used to say, slow down to speed up. Sometimes when you are so eager to be better at something, you give it your best, you give everything you need, but sometimes you forget the basics. And being on your offside, it forces you to slow down, to look at what you've been doing wrong or maybe differently. And in the end, the result is that you have all the best habits and you become a stronger paddler.
Yeah, I totally agree. And speaking of being on the left, I felt a mighty leg drive. You know, my obsession with leg drive.
Yes.
Being on the left and having my left foot forward, it felt like, wow, I'm pushing with that particular group of muscles.
Can I
It
say
was
something?
great. So go ahead.
Is your left foot your best foot forward then?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, let's get back to paddling because I mean, it was great to be on the Kalang and see all those sites that I was used to, the beautiful landmarks of Singapore. You paddle right past Gardens by the Bay. You can see the Marina Bay Sands in the distance. And actually, on the weekends, when there's a Formula One race in town, you paddle right past the paddock, the pit lane. It's a fantastic venue. But going back to learning something from it, I still don't know how we can compete against Asian teams. When they have those conditions, they can train on the water year round. They can train in high temperatures, high humidity. I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so nerd alert, we've dug into some science the other day. Is that we know that athletes do train at high altitudes. That's quite known. Rowers and I don't know, runners maybe. They go
Everyone,
train at high
runners, footballers,
altitudes.
remember when the World Cup was somewhere up in the mountains, they went all to Bolivia to train. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it turns out training in the heat and humidity does something to your fitness as well. So it just in short, like make it short, it just makes you fitter. So I bet maybe that's why or we see a lot of very strong Asian teams are from hotter climates like Singapore, Thailand, the Philippines, and even the Chinese team. They're from southern China.
They're from the south. Yeah. Yeah. And I think even the water training in itself, having lots of it, at least 2, 3 times a week, makes a huge difference.
That is because in the, well, I wouldn't say in the West, because clearly some countries has done very, very well. They are colder than the UK and
And
they're not
Europe.
restrained by the
Yeah.
cold. But in the UK, I think the one thing that we got held back a lot, especially in London, because we don't have a river that we're free to use. A lot of us, for example, Typhoon, you rely on the London Regatta Centre. VRC Dragons, we use the Dockland Sailing Centre. We are not allowed to paddle in dark, and during the winter, shorter daylights, we can't do evening trainings, and I doubt if anyone would want to wake up at 6 o'clock to train in the morning. So
Well, it's still
it
dark at
becomes
6 o'clock in the morning. That's never going to work.
oh, that's true. You don't get the bright until like 8. Yeah, that's true. So we are very limited with training time in London, and especially another thing is it's really cold in London in the UK
Yes.
compared to tropical climates. I think last week you did a training that was 7 degrees.
Yeah, last weekend we had the final season, the final session of the year, and it was really well attended. We have a full boat, 21 people on the boat, but it was
Yeah.
7 degrees in the air, 8 degrees in the water. My hands were like claws at the end of the session. It was like in the position it was holding the paddle.
Was it frozen?
It took a couple of hours to defrost.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's one thing. Like, it really puts a lot of people off. I mean, in London, we're a little bit more blessed. It's not as cold as other parts of England or the UK.
Could be worse.
But the coldest I've paddled in, it was 1 degree. And
Yes, yeah.
the worst thing is, we're not cold enough that the river would freeze, that we can go indoors. So we're still out on the water. You're still dipping your water in freezing cold water. And there's nothing you can do to stay warm because there's only so many layers you can wrap yourself in. You can't wear a dark jacket to go down. And that really hurts the training of the club, I would say, because a lot of people just don't want to do it. It's just too cold, which is understandable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, throughout the winter, the January or February, maybe even early March, when people start thinking, "Oh, actually, it's quite mild, it's nice to go back to training." But through the winter months, we're probably looking at 10, 15 people on a normal weekend training session. And that's really hard if you want to build a team ahead of the racing season, which starts in May.
Yeah. But I guess it's a good opportunity to do some base trainings when you have a very small boat. Focus on long and continuous paddling. So maybe that's something we can learn from the Singaporean teams or the Asian teams in general.
Yeah, actually, last weekend when we went out on LRC on our final session of the year, we covered about 14 kilometers, which is actually longer than we normally do. Normally we do about 12. In Singapore, that particular Saturday, we did around 8 kilometers. So not a very long distance, but it was all measured, stroke by stroke, concentrating, focusing on your technique, focusing on the stroke rate. And this is how you build it.
Because sometimes it's not the longer the better. Sometimes maybe more useful to have more sessions over the week, but shorter sessions.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, there's a lot to say
guess
about
there's
Singapore,
nothing.
and I'm going to miss the warm climate. It's something that we can look back at to take us through January and February, and hopefully get back to Asia at some point next year. But that's everything about my trip, which was conveniently placed to excuse our East meets West segment of the podcast.
Yes, finally, we don't have to listen to any of his Asian travel stories that makes everybody jealous.
Yes. Next week, we have something special. It's about my experience in Liverpool. I've had recently taken part in the GB Senior A assessment over a whole weekend, and we can give you an update on that one. Plus, we have a very special and very different guest.
Yes, so everyone knows what do you need to do to win a dragon boat race? That's the ultimate aim for everybody, I suppose. You have to make the boat go as fast as you can. But how do you achieve that? How to make the boat go faster? That's a little hint on what's the next episode's going to be. If you want to know what we're up to, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, like, follow, and share.
Like, follow, and share, and see you next time.
Ripples dance where the sunrise bleeds. Our journey flows where the river leads. Echoes of laughter fill the air. Chatterbox secrets everywhere.